The summer after 5th grade, around the end of June, I went garage sailing with my mom and grandma in the neighboring town. Had a lot of good buys. The last place we hit up was a housing addition on the edge of town where a lot of old people and empty nesters lived. It was kind of boring, but I thought I would poke around just in case. My mom and grandma let me go ahead of them while they browsed, so I went up to the next house. It looked pretty normal. I mean, it looked the same as every other house in the addition. Maybe not as many frills, but nothing out of place really. There wasn't a sign in the yard, but the garage door was open and there were tables out. A guy was sitting in a lawn chair at the back of the garage. So legit, I suppose. I went in. There wasn't a lot of selection. Maybe an old coffee maker and throw pillows. There was a rack of plus-size women's clothing and shoes. No men's clothes or shoes. Anything that suggested a man lived there. The man at the back of the garage sat there smiling the whole time. He was maybe in his late 30s or early 40s, had a mustache and was bald at the top, and had a fringe of brown hair that tapered down his neck. He wore a wolf t-shirt and denim cutoffs. He kept crossing and uncrossing his very hairy legs, like with rhythm and kind of swinging them. Beneath another table was a huge box of naked Barbies priced 50 cents a piece. I bent down to inspect them. First of all, the Barbie's hair was sticky and crusty, like someone put glue in them. Second of all, they smelled terrible, like rotten or something. Body odor just inconceivably foul. I was pulling away when the man in the back of the garage started asking me questions like how old I was and where I went to school. He asked me if I liked the Barbies. Not really interested, I said. He started talking about his cocker spaniel named Spiffy or something and then let the dog out when it started scratching on the garage door. It started growling at him, like snarling, and it ran around to the back of the house. By then, I decided I was done here. He hadn't really done anything, but he gave me the creeps. Leaving already? He sounded disappointed. I told him to have a nice day. I ran off to my mom and grandma, but I didn't tell my mom about the creeper. I just told her he had a crap selection. Nothing she would like anyway. A week or so later, we saw on the news a man broke into a woman's house, tried on all her clothes and molested her daughter, and hosted a garage sale at their house. That housing addition. So a quick edit for clarification, sort of. Okay, so I guess I left out some details, sorry. The intruder / molester came in the night before the mother had come from work, hid in the basement, if I remember correctly, came up after the two were asleep, tied up the mother and girl, molested her, tried on the mother's clothes. I'm pretty sure the garage sale tables and items were already set up. He just went out there in the morning for some reason, I'll never know. I live in my parents' home as I am at the end of my senior year. This probably isn't as intense as other stories, but it certainly had me freaked out. This happened about 4 days ago. My family lives on a farm, so we have a large amount of land and we're straight off a state road with a horseshoe-shaped driveway. We had a dump trailer that sat in our yard just because we didn't have anywhere else to put it. Due to this whole self-quarantine thing, I'm home with my younger brother. I hear honking outside, and out the window, I can just see a white vehicle. And I'm sitting there, and the vehicle is just honking as if they were waiting for someone to come out. This made me very uncomfortable. In fact, somebody decided to sit there and honk and didn't want to go and even look, for fear of possibly being seen. But of course, younger siblings being as they are, were quite oblivious to how creepy this actually was and decided to walk up to the door in plain sight of the strangers in the vehicle. I, not feeling safe with this, just sitting there and letting my brother talk to strangers who were sitting in the driveway, finally got up to talk to them. I was very uncomfortable with it all. Not in a way that was, I don't want to get sick. In more of a way, there was a stranger who was honking at my door. In hindsight, you could say this might have been about the whole virus in some regards, but other factors do play in. There were two men in this white truck, and the one who spoke to me was in the passenger seat. The driver seemed quite nervous. Every time I refused to give any information, he ended up starting the vehicle, and his friend had to keep insisting he keep talking, which led to him being in this cycle of turning his truck on and off again. The first thing I take note of is This guy had a very heavy accent, which I still can't pin. The best guesstimation I have is something European. He's asking about the dump trailer in my yard if it's for sale, to which I say no, it is not. He asks if someone else is home that he could talk to. I didn't hear exactly who he wanted since his friend had turned the engine on again. My best guess is either a husband or my father, as he kept talking about, tell him, have him call. Well, I'm not married and my father was at work, so I said no, and if he really wanted to see someone, he'd have to come back at a later time. Then he insisted on giving his number. Still refusing to leave the vehicle, while I was saying no, there's no point in getting his number. The trailer isn't for sale and anyone else in my household would echo the exact same thing. But he insists I get a paper or something to write down his number. He has me come close to write down his number, where I notice the next thing. His number. His area code was a Massachusetts number. We were in Pennsylvania. Now he has me get close, right up to the window, which completely throws the whole distance thing out. He just didn't want to get out of the vehicle, which is what really made me uncomfortable. I was too afraid to go back into my house. I didn't truly want to irritate these people and turned my back by refusing, so I just followed what they asked, get them the hell out of my driveway ASAP. I told my parents all this once they had gotten home and gave them the number, which they didn't call because it all seemed too suspicious. My dad decided to pull out a gun for me to keep nearby, just in case someone broke in because of this encounter. As my father said when I told them why they said they stopped, if that trailer was for sale, there would be a for sale sign. About an hour ago, my manager and I were working the closing shift at a store in my small town, off the main road and across from rent-controlled apartments. I was waiting at the register as usual and watching people come in around 10 minutes before close, watching who came in so that I could make sure they all left. There was a guy that came in after a girl that I randomly hyperfixated on. He walked down the main aisle towards the bathrooms and went out of sight. I don't know why, but I wanted to make sure he left. Customer after customer came and went. The ones I saw come in. But 5 minutes to closing time, he never left. My manager went to the bathroom and I stayed by the register until she came out and went to the office. I walked around the first few aisles, in the front towards the door, and I didn't see him. My manager came out and wanted to buy some things right before we were supposed to close. I told her that I saw a guy come in but didn't see him leave. I felt really uncomfortable and disturbed and thought it was just because I've been listening to a lot of insanely creepy podcasts lately. But after she checked the whole store and I went around and checked with her, we saw that he'd left the basket. We went into the office after I grabbed my stuff and we checked the cameras several times. We saw him come in. We watched the cameras again, forwards and backwards. Every camera, outside and inside, right by the exit and incoming door. He never left. We decided to leave after about half an hour and called our general manager. I never saw him leave. Cameras never recorded him leaving. I've been terrified since it just happened. So today, as I was going for a coffee, I decided to check out a new cafe that just opened. As I go near the door, I am surprised and happy to see an ex-girlfriend of mine from when I was a kid. We stare at each other for a second, and then I see she mumbles something and then comes towards me. I go in for the hug, and after we greet, she just says, "Do you remember what you've done to me?" I was baffled. We dated many, many years ago, and we never had issues of any kind. No major fights, no abuse, no toxicity. As a matter of fact, she left me because I would not commit, but remained on good terms for a while after, still hanging out, till she found a job abroad and left. At first I was scared shitless and immediately thought there was something strange. I asked her to be more specific, but she wasn't telling. After a little chit-chat, she told me she was referring to the time I and a friend cleansed her house. It came back to me then. At the time, we were stupid, edgy semi-goth kids, really into the weird and otherworldly stuff. After she complained about feeling her house was weird, a friend from our group offered to do some cleansing ritual, which he did while we were basically half drunk. Of According to her, when 7 years later she talked about this thing with other people, shit started to hit the fan. Like you could feel a presence around the house, drops in temperature, all the good stuff. She was very vague, but apparently she believes some kind of ghost is now possessing her house. Something apparently unleashed after that thing we did, and she started telling her friends about it because nothing happened in the years prior. She then got back to England, but promptly came back here to escape from an abusive fiance. At that point, I was really nervous and I excused myself. She hugged me, said now there is only Christ in her heart, and said we should really have a cup of coffee. This gave me really weird vibes, like weird cult stuff. I basically ran away terrified. Keep in mind, we split on good terms. Like very good. She looked after my dog while I was in England. As a masseuse, she took care of my back for months. She even introduced me to her new boyfriend, and we went out for dinner a couple of times as a group. There's no way she could have held animosity against me. Hell, once abroad, she even offered to help me find a job in the city she was currently living in. This was not a prank done to get back at me, and more so, her eyes. She once was the light of the room, always laughing and cracking jokes. The person I found was sad, with very still eyes, not smiling, not anything, like a completely different person. My mom was born and raised in the high country of East Central Montana. She came from ranching people, and her father, my grandfather, was a genuine cowboy. She often did work around the ranch with him, so not much shakes her to her soul. Except for what happened when she had to run into town when I was only 8 months old. This happened in the middle of a sunny summer day. The ranch she was raised on was almost 2 hours away from the nearest town. You had to drive north on a highway for 30 minutes. Then you had to drive on a dirt road for another 45 minutes across the Montana high country to get to the ranch where she was raised. I'm emphasizing this because it not only shows how far out into buttfuck nowhere she lived at the time, but it plays into why this story becomes so disturbing. My mom had to run into town to get groceries and baby supplies for me. She was driving on the long and isolated dirt road back to the ranch when she reached into her purse on the passenger seat to get something. It slips out of her hand and into the passenger footwell. Fair enough. She then has to stop the car so she can safely retrieve what she dropped. She grabs it, and as soon as she sits back up, she looks into the rear view mirror and sees a man about 100 feet behind the car running at her. Needless to say, she puts the car back into gear and gets the hell out of there. As she's looking back at me in the car seat, making sure that I'm okay, she sees the guy give up running after her and run back into the ditch to hide. Of course, when she gets home, she tells her mom and dad, or my grandparents, about what happened, and they are stunned. Here's where it gets disturbing, at least psychologically. Mom didn't see any cars or trucks parked along that dirt road for the entire way to the ranch. She also didn't see any people walking along the highway or the dirt road, which raises even more questions. How did he get out there? Why was he out there? And even more disturbing, what would he have done to my mom or an 8-month-old me? The more I thought about it, the more disturbing it became. A quote from my mom. I only asked my mom about this story twice. After the second time, she tells me to never ask her about it again, and I completely understand why. I get messed up thinking about it. I can only imagine how she felt having directly experienced it. Edit. I just need to address some things. First, this occurred way out in the middle of nowhere, out in the Montana high country. It's wide open and flat grassland with low rolling hills. The only traces of human activity you'll find out there are the fence posts and maybe a windmill or an old abandoned barn or house. I'm emphasizing this because there were some comments saying that my mom should have just called the police. To that, I say, what police? There are police in the small town where she got her groceries, but out in the Montana high country, good luck. This is the main reason why people who live out there carry firearms. If something happens out there, you might have to deal with it in the moment. Second, some comments were pointing out that it was an interesting coincidence that my mom happened to stop her car near where this guy was hiding. Again, coincidences happen and weird things happen out in the middle of nowhere. Who knows why that guy was out there? Rural Montana is not a place where you casually go hanging out. Unless you actually live out there, know somebody who lives out there, or have some business with someone, you shouldn't be going out there for any reason. On top of how she didn't see anyone walking on the highway or the dirt road and didn't see any vehicles parked along the side of the road, any person who made it out that far on foot for some reason is not someone anyone should be interacting with. My mom was a petite 19-year-old woman with her 8-month-old infant in the back seat when this happened. I highly doubt she could have been any help to him. We'll never know why this guy was out there, and frankly, I don't think we ever want to. This happened 5 years ago, and I am only posting now because I want to warn others. This is quite difficult to talk about, for reasons that will become clear. In 2017, I went to a friend's birthday party. It was their 40th, so it was a pretty big deal. I had recently lost my job and I was struggling with my mental health, but I had a very supportive husband and a good family life. And it was a private party. What could go wrong? My husband was supposed to go with me, but our childcare arrangements fell through at the last moment. I didn't want to go without my husband, but he felt I needed a night out with my friends, and the birthday girl kept asking if I was coming, so I went. It was a private party, and everybody there had been invited by the birthday girl. There were half a dozen people I knew really well. Everyone else was a stranger, but I assumed that the birthday girl had good judgment and everyone present was okay. We were all having a great time, laughing and dancing. At one point, I stepped outside to cool down and smoke a cigarette. A fellow partygoer, Mel, joined me. We talked about the birthday girl, how we knew her, and we talked about football. It turned out we were from the same city and supported the same team. We returned back to the party and he asked me if I wanted a drink. I said no and raised my glass to show him I already had one. I then put my drink down and went to dance with the birthday girl. When I returned from the dance floor, I took a big gulp of my drink, and after that, it all gets a little hazy. The rest of this story is pieced together from various sources and photos. There is a photo of the male party guest and me with the venue's doorstaff. I'm smiling at the camera with my arm around the security man and the guy from the party next to me kissing my cheek. I don't remember this. There's also a photo of me and that guy, with me leaning against him with my eyes closed. I don't remember this either. I woke up the next morning at home on the sofa. My husband was initially furious about the state I came home in, but he didn't know how bad it could have been. Apparently, several friends saw this weird guy trying to guide me into a waiting car and stopped him. When they challenged him, he said I had agreed to leave with him, but I was incoherent at this point. I have no recollection of this, by the way. One of my female friends took me home. I don't remember this, but I know my friend saved me from something horrible. Once my husband knew what had happened, he was very supportive and concerned. I told my husband how quickly my behavior had changed and how quickly I had become uncoordinated and incoherent. This all took place 5 years ago. I saw the birthday girl recently, and she told me that weird guy is currently in prison for assaulting his girlfriend in 2020. Please remember, always be careful with your drink. Never leave it unattended. And watch out for your friends, and make sure they are watching out for you.